If you're talking about edible wild plants native to northeast ecoregions that are edible by people, I'm growing about 100 of them in this nursery. That's 100 I figured out how to grow. There's probably 200 wild strawberry plants over there. And just look at all these other plants. This plant right here is a sweet goldenrod. It's a licorice flavored goldenrod. This plant right here is a wild lettuce. All right, so this is a pawpaw plant, the little baby cactus growing right there. This plant called Indian cucumber, I've just figured out how to grow this from seed. These are all hazelnuts. So everybody knows milkweed is a plant that monarch butterflies like to eat, but people can eat them too. So native edible. A native plant is a plant that's been here for a long time. And when I say long time, I mean thousands of years. I don't mean 100 years. Animals have figured out how to eat them or use them for nesting material, stuff like that. Whereas a non-native plant doesn't have that relationship with the insects and the animals around it. It's not recognized as food, so ecologically they're very disruptive. If invasive species are present and they're edible, I'm going to eat them. I'm going to teach other people how to eat them too. I grew up in the town of Weston, Mass, where my nursery is. I grew up here playing in the woods as a kid and developed a really strong connection to nature. It just felt like a very welcoming place, much more so than school where I would get picked on by other kids and stuff like this. This felt like the safe place to me, being outside. When I was a sophomore in high school, the high school biology department offered a 6-week mini course called Edible Botany. And we learned about 24 species of plants that grew around the high school grounds. And then we made a communal meal from the plants we learned about in the course, and that was the spark that ignited this lifelong passion I have. So that summer, I went to the town library, I took out every book I could find in the topic, I taught myself over 70 more species, and by senior year of high school, I was teaching that class I'd taken as a sophomore. So since senior year of high school in 1974, I've been, nibbling on the landscape, appreciating the wonderful gifts of Mother Nature, and sharing my enthusiasm and my knowledge with other people. But after I retired from my day job, that's when I had this epiphanal experience as an expression of gratitude to Mother Nature for all this nibbling I've been doing all these years. My way that I could give back is I could fill the role of Johnny Appleseed for native edible species, grow some of these native edible plants, and then add them to the landscape. I was given permission to further diversify the landscape here with additional species of edible native plants. And so I walked the site to try and identify locations where on other sites I've seen particular edible species. And here's a good example of where I made a guess that worked. So here I planted some common hazelnut plants. So this is a plant I'm propagating in my nursery. Staghorn sumac. It's called that because the twigs are furry like young deer antler velvet. I'm still getting little baby staghorn sumac plants trying to grow in my nursery. So what I'll do is just pot those plants up and put them in my nursery and grow them up and then plant them out on sites that don't have the staghorn sumac already. Johnny Appleseed, some people will know he's actually from Massachusetts. He was born in Leominster, so we have that in common. And although some of my more smart alecky friends like to remind me that Johnny Appleseed was most interested in growing apples to make an alcoholic beverage from them, the idea of partnering with others to get edible plants out in the landscape, that's what I'm doing. It's just instead of apples, which are actually non-native, they're from Eurasia, I'm specialized in the edible native species. And these are plants that are all at home here. It's just, I find that a lot of the sites I work on, they're missing. One of the nice aspects of working with natives is that if you do guess right and put a plant in where it's going to be happy, that's it. You don't have to prune it, you don't have to water it, you don't have to weed it. You can completely leave it, because these are plants that have, evolved without being pampered or coddled. They just want to be left to their own devices. And so if you give them a helping hand and just get them established in a place where they're happy, that's it. That's all you have to do. My entire professional training in the subject is one botany course I took in college in the year 1975, and that's it. And I'm readily admit that because I hope it's reassuring to people to be reminded that for the vast majority of humanity's existence on Earth, we were gathering wild plants, and people weren't walking around with doctorates in botany to do this stuff. It's only relatively recently in our history that we got disconnected from nature. But there is a trend that people want to connect directly to food again. They don't want food to be all about, mega corporations shipping in food from thousands of miles away. They want to have some ability to be self-sufficient in what they're growing. And so the same people want to know, like, what weeds could I be eating in my backyard? I just see that as a normal kind of an expression of a human's bond with nature, is to nibble on it too, in a respectful way. It sounds a little touchy-feely, but that's the kind of relationship I feel that I have with plants, is that we have a bond, and they let me know about them, and I appreciate it. I think they know that they're being intentionally grown and appreciated for who they are. So I think they know that.